gang, it's Tex here again, this time coming to you from the beautiful Grand Canyon. And in today's video, I'd like to review with y'all all of the gear that I packed for my 2021 Appalachian Trail through hike. It spanned from Georgia to Maine and through several seasons, from late winter, early spring, all the way through the fall. Now keep in mind that your gear will vary with every trip, depending upon where you're hiking, what gear you're into lately, what seasons you're in. And always test out your gear in advance. What worked well for me may not necessarily work out well for you. This video will also be a bit of a twofer in that I'll be going through the items according to where I packed them in my pack. So you'll also get to see how all of my gear was organized. And with that, let's get to the gear. First, I'd like to introduce you to my pack. His name is Wilson. I highly recommend that you name your pack as well. Wilson is a Zpacks Arc Haul Zip pack. It has both the inner main compartment as well as an outer zippered compartment. Now, as far as what I put in which area of my pack, I really thought about how often I would be using these items throughout the day. So the items that I used most often, and I didn't want to take off my pack for, I would put in the two hip belt pockets. If it was something that I might like to get, for example, during my lunch break, but I don't want to go through the whole interior compartment of my pack, I might put it on this outer zippered compartment. The things that I generally did not need until the end of the day when I got to camp, that's what went in the main compartment, and this is what we're going to go through first. First of all, I lined my pack with, turned out to be a Contractor bag. I had originally lined the inside compartment of my bag with just a single Nyla Flume pack liner. It ended up failing on me. And so at the B&B that I was staying at the time, the husband there had Contractor bags. I know most people use trash compactor bags, and I may change over to that in the future, but I knew I could trust this, and after having my gear soaked throughout my pack, I really enjoyed being able to trust this thing. So I carried this Contractor bag the rest of the hike. Now up on the very top of my pack, I would put things that I would need sooner rather than later throughout the day. So I would keep my jacket in the top. I carried this through the entire trip. It's just a Technical Fleece Marmot full zip jacket. Next, I would put my tent. This is a Zpacks Duplex tent, a Zpacks tent stake sack. I added some reflective tape onto it because I often packed up while it was still dark. I carried mostly 6.5-inch titanium tent stakes from Zpacks as well, and 2 MSR Mini-Groundhog stakes that I would use for the clips on the vestibule. Underneath it, I would keep any other large, bulky clothing items that I wouldn't need until the end of the day. I carried a Mountain Hardwear full zip down jacket and also outdoor Research Ferrosi women's full-length pants. Directly behind my tent and my clothing, closest against my back, I would carry my bear bag. Now this was normally huge because it had 4 to 5 days worth of food in it. This is a Hilltop Packs Yo Bear style bear bag. For my kitchen items inside the bear bag, I would carry one 1-gallon zippered bag. This would serve as my trash bag. I also kept a 1-gallon bag for every single day. I really enjoyed organizing my food per day, so I would have my breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks for each day packed away separately. It just helped me stay very organized, made sure that I had enough food and also not too much food, and made it easy to grab the next day's food each morning. I carried a Zpacks Rock Bag. It eventually got so many holes in it that I had to replace it. This is the second one. And the second one, lo and behold, got holes in it too, so I lined it with duct tape eventually. I also carried Zpacks Slickline for the rope, 50 feet, with a little mini carabiner at the top. For my hike, I went stoveless. You'll see I didn't carry a stove whatsoever. Most people at that point would cold soak. I didn't even cold soak on this hike, although I have in the past. I pretty much carried just items that were ready to eat instantly. Lots of wraps, lots of Uncrustables, etc. But I did carry one empty peanut butter jar, and I used this to shake up my breakfast essential shakes that I had every morning. Other smaller items that I carried in my lunch kit is a Sea to Summit titanium spoon, a Ladybug spider knife, a very small cutting board that was just cut from a plastic bowl, and a quarter of a bandana to serve as a napkin. Now, most backpackers go with an extremely minimal hygiene kit. For me, I started out with that, and I eventually started adding in the items as I really missed them, so I ended up carrying more for hygiene items than most hikers would. First, I carried a small quart-size bag, and I did this so that the smellables that I carried in my hip belt pockets in my pack, I would put them in here each night, put them in with my hygiene kit, and that way the next morning it was very easy to unpack and remember what I needed to put back into my hip belt pockets. One very lightweight comb, foldable toothbrush and toothpaste, one ultralight disposable razor, a few extra ponytail holders, some floss, small fingernail clipper, and I carried small amounts of 3 different kinds of lotion. Lotion that I use on my face at home, O'Keeffe's skin repair cream that I used for my body. This is just in a random extra container from Dollar General. And then a smaller lotion that's the thicker hand repair cream that's great for hands and feet that may crack during the colder months. I carried Neutrogena's makeup remover cleansing towelettes throughout the hike. I used one of these per day to use as a hiker bath. Worked out really well for me, and it's nice to clean up. It makes you sleep better. Next in my pack was my Hyperlite 440 large gear pod, and I used this to put any of the smaller items that I kept within my pack that I didn't need until the end of the day, but I wanted to still keep them organized and all together. As far as pajamas go, most of the time I just slept in my hiking clothes. However, during the winter time, I did carry a backup. This is the Under Armour UA Base 2.0 thickness. It's just a technical fleece, top and bottom. And I carried these just in case the clothes that I was wearing during the day that I would normally sleep in got wet from rain or snow. However, with the rain gear that I had, I never had that problem, but I did carry these as a precaution. Now, when it got really hot and you would sweat through your clothes and they were terribly salty, I did carry some backup pajamas during that time, just a very lightweight cotton bottom and a Capilene Patagonia tank top. During the warmer months, I carried a quilt, but there were nights when it was still chilly, so I brought quilt straps for when I wanted to strap that down and keep any cold air from getting in. Since I was doing videos on this trip, I had to carry an external thumb drive for my iPhone. I would offload all of my videos onto this so that I could continue to shoot on the iPhone. I brought a mini cut-up sponge, just a kitchen sponge, so that I could soak up any rain that got inside my tent. I enjoyed sending postcards from the trail, so I carried a couple stamps with me. I was originally carrying the AT guide, the paper version, as well as the app that I had on my phone. I ended up not using the paper version, so I sent it home. I enjoyed carrying a very lightweight shoulder strap shopping bag. I use this a lot in towns. A big Agnes inflatable pillow. This is the AXL Air Pillow. During the winter time, when you're at risk of things freezing, if you leave them outside of your bag, I carried a smaller bag to put all of those items in. I would shove this down into the foot of my sleeping bag or maybe on the side, but it would keep everything together so nothing would get lost down in the depths of the bag. I also carried a couple plastic shopping bags, and for any nights where I needed to, for example, if my shoes froze overnight, I would put them in the morning in 2 of these, and I would shove them under my legs in my sleeping bag, have breakfast in my bag, and by the time I was ready to get dressed, the shoes had thawed out. Good for stuff like that, or if you have clothes that are wet that you want to dry out a little bit, but not get your bag totally soaked from. I did not carry camp shoes on this trip until I got up to Maine, where I had more water crossings. So for the nights in camp when I had on dry socks but my shoes were soaked, just use a bread bag on each sock, and that would keep your socks from getting wet but still allow you to walk around camp in your wet shoes. Zpacks brush tail possum socks. I carried these only when it was pretty cold. I would supplement these with the hot hands or hot feet warmers, and I would put these down in the socks. I do have down booties. Decided not to bring them on this trip, and I didn't really need them. I carried 2 extra pairs, besides the one I was wearing, of socks on this trip. I used the Darn Tough crew socks when it was cooler, and when it warmed up I used the Darn Tough ankle length socks with gaiters on top of them. I carried 2 extra pairs of underwear, 1 hiking underwear and 1 to use for town when doing laundry, a poly Cairo ground cloth from Gossamer Gear. This was not for use under my tent because it wasn't necessary for my tent, but I cut it to the same length as my air pad, and I used this under the air pad whenever I slept in a shelter. I kept all of my electronic accessories in a little 1-liter stuff sack from Hightail Designs. I had to increase the size of the battery I was carrying. Last year I carried the Anchor 10,000 size, which did run out on the longer stretches. This year I carried the 20,000. The Anchor 30-watt dual port fast charge charger, a cord for each of the electronics that I carried with me. I carried for my phone cords a longer 6-foot version, which is a little bit of extra weight, but as far as convenience, when you're editing in your bed in the room, you don't know where the plug is, I enjoyed having the extra length on this. And a pair of earplugs that I would always carry, I would throw in this bag too. Next in my pack, I would pack my air pad, and I carried the Thermarest Neo Air X Lite sleeping pad. I preferred the size large because it gave you extra width since I'm a side sleeper. I carried the X Lite when it was cooler, but when it warmed up, I did swap out to the lighter Uber Light version in the same size. In the very bottom of my pack, I would just stuff my quilt. So in the summertime, or the warmer months, I carried the Enlightened Equipment Revelation quilt. This is 20 degrees. I personally ordered the long version because I wanted to be able to pull it up over my head. That's how I sleep. Little strange, but I enjoyed it. However, during the start of my hike, I brought a warmer bag. I'm an extremely cold sleeper, so I went ahead and upgraded to something that was going to keep me very warm. This is the Western Mountaineering Versalite bag. It's a 10-degree bag. I had it overstuffed, so it would technically be a 0-degree bag. And it's full zip, kept me very warm during those colder seasons. So that's everything for the main compartment of the bag that I wouldn't use until the very end of the day. Next, let's go into this large outer zippered compartment. I would use most of the stuff in here at some point during the day, but not very often. I lined this outer compartment as well to protect the items from getting damp with rain. I had used 1 Nyloflume bag. Again, that ended up failing on me, so I ended up doubling up the Nyloflume bags. A little extra weight, but I could count on it. It worked well from that point on. On the very top, I would always place my Garmin InReach Mini. I know most people clip these to the outside of their pack by the shoulder strap. This I really didn't have problems with. As long as it was sitting on top, it seemed to send the signal just fine, so that's where I carried it. Trucker hat. I ended up cutting a bandana in half and just sewing on little buttons, and so that would give me a little sun scarf on the back of the hat. Most people don't carry sunglasses on the trip. I added them when I was hiking last year and enjoyed having them in town, so I carried sunglasses. When it was cooler, I carried a buff. I enjoyed having this, especially at night. I would wear it, and whenever my nose got too cold as I was sleeping, I would pull it up over my nose. This allowed me to keep my nose warm, but keep the condensation from getting in my sleeping bag if I were to pull my bag over my nose. A lightweight fleece hat from Zpacks. Outdoor Research's woolly sensor liner gloves. Dockstein brand boiled wool mittens. REI Minimalist GTX waterproof mittens. I really enjoyed having these 3 versions to layer as needed. You could wear just the liner gloves if you just needed a little extra warmth. Use these in addition to them, the waterproof mittens, or just them alone if it's raining and you'd like to keep your hands a little drier. These boiled wool mittens would be overkill for most AT hikers. However, since my hands are always so cold, I really appreciated them on those colder mornings. For rain gear, I carried the Montbell Versalite rain jacket and rain pant. I upgraded to these since my hike last year. Very much enjoyed them. These, for me, in conjunction with an umbrella I used, never soaked through for me. So the clothes that I was wearing underneath these, I could always sleep in. I carried these the entire trail since once it got warmer, I sent home my down jacket. I kept these as a backup in case I needed some additional warmth. Enlightened Equipment's rain wrap once it warmed up, I would use only this when it rained, along with my umbrella, and that was enough to keep me dry. Fishbone tent anchors that I purchased off of Amazon. These worked well for the tent platforms when you got up into the whites. I kept my first aid items inside just a little Quart Ziploc bag. These were pretty minimal because you really don't need too much out here. Now, the first aid supplies that I had to start carrying when I had issues with my feet, totally separate issue. Those I added as needed, so I'm not going to include those in the video. But basically just alcohol swabs in case I had a cut and band-aids. I was carrying Leukotape to help prevent blisters. Had to knock that out of my emergency kit since that really gave me a reaction. My repair and emergency kit had a few items. I carried a little roll of duct tape. I originally carried it on my trekking pole. However, when I tried to use it, it had deteriorated and become unusable. So I just carried it, kept the water off it instead. Tenacious tape, repair tape that's specific to my tent, the repair kits that came with my air pads, a mini sewing kit with just some black and white thread, a couple needles, a couple safety pins and buttons, one extra washer for my Sawyer water filter, a mini lighter, an alternative way to treat water as a backup. I carried aqua tabs. For my bathroom kit, I used a 1-gallon bag. I included a string so that you could hang it on your neck while you're in the privy rather than setting it on the ground, which was rather questionable. The Deuce of Spades trowel by the Tent Lab. Random rolls of toilet paper I picked up from various places along the way. And for feminine products, you do have to carry them out with you. So I would carry a little doggy duty bag, put them in there, and then put them in a Ziploc bag. Next, we'll move on to the hip belt pockets. Now, in the pockets here, I carried the things that I would access most often throughout the day, where I didn't even want to have to take my pack off. Easily accessible items. In here, I carried a couple of medications, a painkiller, something like Pepto-Bismol, and Benadryl for allergies. A small blister kit, including Band-Aids, a small scissors, and a safety pin. Zpacks wallet. And I would always carry a small little piece of paper with an emergency name and phone number. I carried all of these items in a quart size Ziploc bag because these hip belt pockets also were not waterproof, so this would keep the rain off of these items. The remainder of this space in this pocket was taken up by snacks. I put all of my day's snacks in here on this side. The other hip belt pocket carried more of my gear items that I use throughout the day. A tube of sunscreen, hand sanitizer. When it became bug season, I carried some DEET, also a head net when necessary to keep the mosquitoes and gnats away. Headlamp, this is Nightcore brand. I carried AirPods, but I also carried a corded version of earphones in case it was too high wind when making videos. It has a microphone on it. Ticked off tick remover, an emergency whistle. In addition to the large battery pack that I was carrying, I had purchased mid-hike the iWalk mini portable iPhone charger, and this was far more convenient to recharge my phone during the day. I carried it in a pouch on my shoulder strap, and I could just pop this onto the bottom of my phone as I was hiking. I also carried a smart water bottle flip top cap, just an extra one, and Body Glide anti-chafing balm. I carried everything that was within that hip belt pocket also within a quart-size bag to help protect against the rain. Sorry for the wind that's kicking up. I know it's getting a little annoying, but I gotta shoot this before the weather turns colder. Moving on to what's on the outside of my pack, these are also items that I want easily accessible throughout the day. Snow Peak Ultralight Umbrella. I loved this thing. I tried an umbrella for the first time on this hike, and I will never hike without it again, especially on the AT with so much rain. A Knock 2-liter dirty water bag, a full-size Sawyer water filter. I carried my electrolytes in the side pocket as well. I enjoyed Noon personally. And the Zpacks 48-inch carbon fiber tent pole, as well as two 24-inch gear ties. I used this one pole along with my two trekking poles and used these gear ties to tie them together. I used that as a tripod and attached my iPhone to that tripod with the gear ties. That worked really well for shots when I didn't have a photographer around to help me. In the side pocket on the other side of the pack, I carried just a second 1-liter water bottle, And I carried a smaller one that I used for my electrolyte mix. I enjoyed having that separate, but also it gave me the capacity to carry more water. You don't always need to carry a lot of water on the AT. Whenever it rained, I did not like to filter water in the rain, so if it was a rainy day, I personally would just carry a full day's supply of water. Moving on to the shoulder straps. Justin UL on Etsy made this little water bottle holder for a 1 liter water bottle size. It did keep tearing. I may upgrade this to the version made by Zpacks instead. 1 liter smart water bottle. A lot of people asked about this straw attachment that you saw in my videos. I very much enjoyed it. I purchased this off of Amazon. I'll include a link in the video description. And then I just added a camelback mouthpiece to the top of it. On this side of the pack, I had 2 Zpacks trekking pole holsters, one up here on the shoulder strap, one down here on the hip belt. When I was not using my trekking poles, which happened a lot, the higher up you get on the trail, more north, just fold down your trekking poles, put them away. I also included a mini carabiner on this top one. That allowed me to attach, oh, and there was a third I kept right here. These 2 things allowed me to attach my umbrella to my pack very easily. I used an REI multi-towel mini for both a sweat rag and a snot rag, a Hyperlight Mountain Gear cell phone case on the shoulder strap. Inside of here, I carried a couple extra rubber bands for cases when I could attach my cell phone to a tree and use that as a tripod. I also carried a Cam Kicks shutter remote control. We talked earlier about the hip belt pockets. These were made by Zpacks. I had this pouch custom made also by Justin UL on Etsy. It holds my P-style personal urination device. It also has a little compartment on the outside for my chapstick and a pen. You can also use this as a self-defense tool. And finally, strapped to the top of my pack, I would always carry my Z-seat. Finally, let's go over the items that counted as worn weight. These are the Black Diamond Trail Ergo cork trekking poles. On one of the trekking poles, I used a self-ski smartphone attachment. A wicking shirt, this is by the brand Odlo. A pair of running shorts, of course they have to be Texas themed. Wicking underwear and sports bra. Darn Tough crew length socks. When it was cooler, once it warmed up, I swapped to ankle length socks, and I would pair these with Dirty Girl gaiters to keep all of the dirt and stuff out from getting inside my socks when they were this length. And for my shoes, this year I wore Topo Athletic Ultra Venture Pro shoes. I went through 4 pairs of these. They have the wide toe box, but it's not 0 drop. It's got a 5mm drop, and that worked better for my feet. And that is everything. And I know it was a lot. Again, I apologize for the wind. Just wanted to get this video out for you guys. Thanks for joining Wilson and I. Hope you found this helpful. Hope it helps you prepare for any future hikes. And please join us at the Grand Canyon here. This place cannot be beat. See y'all next time.